הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, ידדי ידדי. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, ידדי ידדי. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. Well, since it is still technically Shabbat, still Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to this evening's festival service. We will begin with the Havdalah, the separation between Shabbat and between what would normally be the regular week, but this time we're separating from Shabbat to Yom Tov because it is Erev Shavuot. So, with the help of our wonderful co-presidents, Lynn Weinstein and Betty Adams, who will be assisting me here this evening, I thank them and am always happy to share the bima with them. And I want to welcome again Dr. David McFarland, who showed up this evening at our request. Since he couldn't be here with us last night, I'm so happy you can be here with us this evening. So we will begin this evening with words of song asking that God be our strength. Ozi v'zimrat Yah v'yehi li Shua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah v'yehi li Shua. As we say farewell to another week, we look forward to receiving Shabbat again in a week's time, but we must say goodbye. Yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yada-dai. Yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yada-dai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, borei peri hagafen. Yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-da-da-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yai-dai, yada-dai-dai, yada-dai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei minei v'samim, borei minei Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Morei meorei ha'esh Morei meorei ha'esh Yadai yadadadadai dai Dai yada da da dai dai yada dai 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 yada dai dai yada dai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Amavdil ben kodesh lechol Amavdil ben kodesh lechol Amavdil ben kodesh lechol Chatotenu mimchol Zareinu v'chaspenu yad bekachol V'chakochavim balayla Shavuot tov Shavuot tov, 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 a good week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishmi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimheira v'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, Moshiach ben David, Moshiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishmi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. We now, normally, candle lighting and Kiddush are done in the home. But we're going to modify that a little bit and bring it here. As you can see around our sanctuary, all of the lights on all of our memorials are lit. And it is at this time and at all of the Shalosh Regalim, the three festivals, and on Yom Kippur, where we light up all of our memories and we bring that light into our lives. So we want to symbolize that light here this evening with this memorial candle. As our memories of those who are no longer with us bring us joy, so may this light and the light of all of those whose spirits are with us strengthen us and keep us whole in these times. And we say together, Amen. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Are we not doing Kiddush?
Yes, we are. We just...
Oh. Yes, well, we still have a little bit of wine. So why don't we bless this, the entrance of Chag HaShavuot with the Kiddush for Shavuot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'char banu mikol ha'am, v'romamanu mikol lashon, v'kirishanu b'mitzvotav. V'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu be'ahava, moedim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason, et yom chag hashavuot hazeh, zman matan toratenu mikra kodesh, zecher l'tziat mitzrayim, hivanu v'charta otanu ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim, umoadei kodshecha b'simcha u'sason hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. And we join together with the Shehechianu, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lahazman hazeh. Amen. L'chaim. We thank God for helping us to reach this season. Though we have put in a lot of hard work, let us hope that our harvest proves to be fruitful. We will now begin our service proper on page 394 with the Baruch Hu as we rise. Yai da 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 yai da yai da da. Yai da 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 yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Yai da 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 da. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. The Ma'ariv Aravim thanks God for creation, specifically for creating the cycle of day and night. And it is with that cycle that we are able to plant and we are able to grow things that help nourish us. And it is this idea of harvesting and being grateful for the harvest that are the essence of the Shalosh Regalim, of the three holy festivals, the times when the Jews would come to the temple and bring the offerings, specifically for Shavuot. We'll talk about this later this evening. Yom HaBikurim, the first fruits. Now we say fruits, but this is actually a wheat harvest, a grain harvest. The fruits aren't harvested until the autumn. So we give the first thing that grows from the ground, the first thing that we harvest, we give up, we sacrifice that first little bit in order to give thanks for all that is to come after that. And so we thank God for continuing this cycle of day and night, of night and day. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyon balayla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light, night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyom balayla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai Tzevahot Shemo, El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Hamariv Aravim. We now turn to page 398. 399, as we read together in the middle of the page. Sinai was only the beginning. The Torah has never ceased to grow. In every age it has been purified and enlarged. It has a permanent core and expanding periphery. It expands as the horizon of our vision grows. Nor are God's revelations confined to Israel. God has been the inspiration of the great and good among all families of the earth. God's love and guidance reach out to all the world. Ihei mechayenu ve'orech yameinu v'hem negei yomam v'layla. Ve'avatecha tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch Ata Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. We turn to page 400 and 401 as we rise together for the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu malchuto leolam va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod malchuto leolam va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. You may be seated. We turn the page and continue with chanting of the Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'otecha ve'hayu hadbarim ha'ele asher anochi metzabecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha uv'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. We turn the page to 404 and we read together at the bottom. All this we hold to be true and trustworthy for us. You alone are our God, and we are Israel, your people. You are our sovereign and Savior, who delivers us from oppressors' hands and saves us from tyrants' fists. You work wonders without number, marvels beyond count. You give us life and steady our footsteps. You performed miracles for us before Pharaoh, signs and wonders in the land of the Egyptians. You led your people Israel out from their midst to freedom from all time. When your children witnessed your dominance, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously. Yai dai dai yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 yai dai 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 mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norah tehilo Tosefele, Norah tehilo Tosefele. Malechutecha ra'u v'anecha, Bokei ayam livnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze Elianu ve'amru, Ze Elianu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. We turn to page 409 and read together at the bottom of the page. May we lie down this night in peace and rise up to life renewed. May this night spread over us a canopy of calm, lifted by the blessing of rest. There will come a time when the morning will begin, no word of war, famine, or anguish. There will come a dawn to rejoice in the peace of mind, heart, and being. Praised are you, the source of renewal within us, for the night's rest and for the promise of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, haporeh sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu malkeinu lechayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, v'taknenu me'etzah tova milfanecha, v'hoshienu leman shemecha. Ve'agel ba'adeinu v'haser me'aleinu, oyev tevet v'cherev v'rav, ve'yagon ve'haser satan milfaneinu me'achareinu, tzel kenafecha tastirenu, tzel kenafecha tastirenu. Ki el shomreinu matzilenu ata, ki el melech hanun verachum ata, ushmo tzeitzeinu uvoeinu lechayim ulshalom, me'atah ve'ad olam, me'atah ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. We now turn to page 468. Double checking. Yes, 468 as we rise for the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechayei Hakol Atarav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Zomech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, melech meimit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman nata lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. We take this moment for silent prayer. ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, הטוב שמך, ולך For a few brief announcements, I invite our co-president, Betty Adams.
We have a treat tonight. There's really only one announcement. And that is, oh, thank you. Now there's really an announcement. The announcement is that tomorrow morning at 9:30, we will have the Shavuot Festival Morning Service with Gisker prayers right here in the sanctuary. And we will also be broadcasting that. So if you're watching, look for the link later tonight or early tomorrow morning for the 9:30 a.m. service here in our sanctuary and also virtually. Yom Tov.
Thank you. We now turn to our concluding prayers on page 586 as we rise for the Aleinu at the top of the page. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. You may be seated. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking in the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I have known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. We remember this evening all of those in our lives who have come before us and all of those who we did not know who came before us, that built the path that helped us to be here where we are today. We turn to page 598 and we rise for the Kaddish Yatom in memory of all those who have passed, and especially, of course, for those who no longer have anyone to say Kaddish Yatom for them. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'olmei almaya, yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shemei de kudasha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memory be a blessing. You may be seated. So I was thinking of ways to end this service, and quite shocking. There are not a lot of Shavuot songs. There's not a lot of what is it? I am a latka. I am a latka. So there are a lot of fun ones for all of these other holidays, but Shavuot seems to be lacking in a couple of them. But I did remember this from my camp days, written by Dan Nichols, Sweet as Honey. And since we're going to be doing a little bit of studying this evening, if you stay with us, it is actually proper to say this blessing before we study. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Sweet as honey, sweet as honey, sweet as honey on our tongue. Chag Sameach. I hope those of you who are joining us virtually, I hope you stick around for our little learning discussion portion, which will be in just a couple of minutes. So feel free to get up, stretch, go to the bathroom, and we'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Eric, can you mute the audio? people to hear. So, yep, we're good. Okay, hi, welcome back. To those of you who are joining us virtually, thank you for sticking around. Right now, our wonderful jack of all trades, Eric Adams, will be dropping in the chat of the YouTube, will be dropping in a PDF of the sheet, of the discussion sheet with some texts. I encourage you to click on it and open it up and follow along. Or you can just listen, because I'll have people reading different parts of this. We won't be hitting every single text in here, otherwise we will be here all night. And even though it is a mitzvah to do so, and we'll be talking about that, studying the whole entire evening of Shavuot, we're practical Jews. I need sleep. And I know everybody else appreciates their own time. So Shavuot is a very interesting holiday in a couple of ways. One, the names. We have multiple names for this holiday, as we do for some of the other Shalosh Regalim that I talked about earlier in the service, the 3 festival holidays or the 3 pilgrimage holidays. In fact, Regalim not only means like festivals or a regular occurrence of a celebration, but it also is regel, which means the feet or leg, and it symbolizes our actual pilgrimage, our walking. We have to use our legs in order to celebrate this. And so I encourage you at some time during this holiday to get out and take a walk when it's not raining, or even just walk around your living room a little bit. Get moving, get the blood flowing. And so let us begin our discussion this evening talking about the names of Shavuot. We have a couple of different references to this holiday in our Tanakh, in our text, and many more in our rabbinical discussions later on, the Talmud, the rabbinic Judaism that we base our observance on, because they had to come up with a new way of praying when the temple was destroyed, and they had to come up with new ideas. So Shavuot, or most often translated as the feast or the holiday or the celebration of weeks, is a summer holiday that celebrates the reaping of the grain harvest and the bringing of that harvest, or the first bits that you harvest, you bring as an offering to God. So let's take a look at some of the ways that it shows up in our text. Would anybody like to read the first one, Exodus 23:14 through 16?
3 times a year you shall hold a festival for me. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month of Abib, for in it you went forth from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. And the feast of the harvest, of the first fruits of your work, of what you sow in the field, and the feast of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of your work from the field.
So this is where we come up with the term Shalosh Regalim. This is the first time it shows up. Now in this, if you take a look at the Hebrew, you're not going to see Shavuot. You're not going to see Pesach. You're not going to see Sukkot. These are not the names of those holidays yet. This comes before. So we can infer that the names that we call them today came a little bit after. if we follow that Genesis was written first, Exodus was written second, so on and so forth. So let's take a look at this. Feast of Unleavened Bread is, of course, Pesach. Yes. Now, here's an interesting thing. Set in the month of Aviv, or Aviv. Now, do we have a month of Aviv in the Jewish calendar? No, we do not. Which is very interesting for it to mention a month that we don't have. Well, scholars have looked at this and commented that it might be that the month that it's referring to might have been from a set of month names that we took from the Babylonian culture. So, and of course, we get those hints. The unleavened bread, he went forth from Egypt. That sort of gives us our clues. The Feast of the Harvest, okay? We have Chag HaKatsir, the harvest, the Feast of the Harvest. And then here's where we get our clue that this is talking about what we nowadays call Shavuot. We have Bikurei Ma'asecha, the first fruits of your work. Okay? Bikurei Ma'asecha. So Bikurei Ma'asecha is actually what we call in Hebrew a smichut. That's where you take two nouns and you put them together. And so it's actually Bikurim Shel Ma'asecha. But we can put that together, Bikurei Ma'asecha. So Bikurim, first fruits, keep that in mind. We'll get to that in a sec. And then the Feast of the Ingathering, Chag Ha'asif. This is Sukkot, okay? When you gather in the results of your work from the fields. This would be, Sukkot is the harvest of the actual things that we would call fruits nowadays. This would be your pomegranates, your dates, this happens in the autumn. Whereas now this harvest is the wheat. So let's turn the page and let's take a look at the next occurrence. Anybody want to? Oh, well, why don't we just go around that way? Yeah, go ahead.
Picking a short one. On the day of the first fruits, your feast of weeks, when you bring in an offering of the new grain to Adonai, you shall observe a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations.
You brought up a question earlier this evening about how can we light the candles of Yom Tov, because here we're told you do not work, okay? Even though it says at your occupation, it means you don't work at all. This is just like Shabbat, a day of rest. So we have this moment in between Havdalah and when we light the candles of Yom Tov, which usually happens at home. Here we symbolically lit a candle of memory, not your typical Yom Tov candles. But I like this idea. It focuses on taking what those have built up before us and doing good in the world with that. And that's what I like about it. So here we have Uviyom HaBikurim. Here we have it. We've finally been given a name that we can associate with weeks because we have it here. On the day of your first fruits, your feast of weeks. Okay? You shall bring in the offering of grain to Adonai, and it shall be a sacred occasion. So here is our first sort of mention of weeks. Let us take the next from Leviticus.
And from the day on which you bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath, you shall count off 7 weeks. They must be complete. You must count until the day after the 7th week, 50 days. Then you shall bring an offering of new grain to Adonai.
So here is where we're given the commandment to count the Omer. And it's a little bit confusing because it says here, well, the sheaf of elevation, and from that day on which you shall bring the sheaf of elevation offering, the day after the Sabbath. This is actually referring to Pesach. Even though it says Sabbath, it's referring to Pesach. So, like I said, we observe rabbinic Judaism. There is another, the name escapes me now. You ever have that? Like Karaites, thank you very much, who do not follow the rabbinic teachings. They stick to the Tanakh, and that's where they put the break, the hafsakah. That's where they put it. And so they would look at this and say, okay, so this would be the Shabbat either on Passover or the Shabbat during the Passover week. Once that Shabbat occurs, that's when you start counting. First, it makes it easier because each Shabbat, you're on a new week. Luckily this year, it happened to be that. We had it fall on each Shabbat since Passover, the first night of Passover was Shabbat. So here we're being given the commandment to count these weeks. We're given context of this. And again, told to bring the grain offering to God. Now, the next page. With all of this, we've sort of been given sort of the outline of what are some of the traditions are for what we call Shavuot. We have different names, the first fruits, we have grain, we have the Omer. Already we have all of these things we need to follow. Now let's look at some Talmud if we weren't confused enough. Lynn.
The sages taught on the 6th day of the month of Sivan, the 10 commandments were given to the Jewish people. Rabbi Yossi says on the 7th day of the month. Rava said, everyone agrees that the Jews came to the Sinai desert on the new moon, as it is written here, in the 3rd month after the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt. The same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai, from Exodus 19:1, without elaborating what day it was. And as it is written there, this month shall be to you the beginning of months. It shall be the 1st month of the year to you, from Exodus 12:2. Just as there the term this is referring to the new moon, so too here the term is referring to the new moon. And similarly, everyone agrees that the Torah was given to the Jewish people on Shabbat, as it is written here in the 10 Commandments. Remember the Shabbat day to keep it holy, from Exodus 28. And it is written here, and Moses said to the people, remember this day, in which you came from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall be no leaven eaten, from Exodus 13. Just as there the mitzvah of remembrance was commanded on the very day of the Exodus, so too here the mitzvah of remembrance was commanded on the very day of Shabbat.
So, have you ever heard of the joke, 3 rabbis, 4 opinions?
Oh, yeah.
This is where it comes from. Talmud is very, very confusing. And I wanted to include it because, quite frankly, this is one of the easier things to follow. So, in Talmudic literature, you have a premise that is given, or a question that is posed. Then the sages, the rabbis, give examples or thoughts to either support or to offer an alternative. Here it seems that the rabbis were pretty much on the same page here. But it's sort of showing that back on the previous page when it says the day after the Sabbath. Okay? Well, what is that? And from that day, and it's trying to explain how because the Jews came into the Sinai desert on the new moon, we know that that's Rosh Chodesh. We know that there's a certain time frame, and this is basically trying to work backwards. It's like coming up with a solution and then forming the problem to your solution. It happens a lot. In fact, and this shall be a new year for you. Okay? How many Jewish New Years are there? 4. There are 4 Jewish New Years. Okay? You have Rosh Hashanah, which is the most common. Tu B'Shvat, the birthday of the trees, of the earth. You have Passover. It said that was the start. And then you have Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah. So we have a lot of different ways of celebrating the same idea at different periods of our calendar year. So I thought it was interesting to include this as to why they felt that it should begin on a Sabbath. But this is also, it establishes the timeline of when we came into the desert and thus when we received Torah. Okay? So now we have sort of an idea of what the association between the receiving of the Torah. In fact, during the Kiddush, I actually sing Chag HaShavuot Hazeh Siman Matan Toratenu, the time when we received the Torah, or Toratenu, our Torah. Yes. So let us turn the page. And here's the question that everybody keeps asking me, and you're not going to like the answer. Why so much dairy? Well, truth is, we don't know. We don't know entirely specifically why, but we have come up with ideas to help support. So, Betty, do you want to read our Song of Songs?
Hello.
There we go.
Sweetness drops from your lips, O bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the scent of your robes is like the scent of Lebanon.
Anybody have an idea of what the scent of Lebanon would be? Cedar?
Cedar.
Yeah? So, this idea of milk and honey under our tongues. Now, we would like to, of course, view the Song of Songs as this beautiful love letter between two parties. I think, Lynn, did you want to say something towards this? Oh, sorry. And so we see, because God is, the essence of Torah is the Jewish people and God, we can then say that God, to speak the words that came from God, to speak praises to God, is like honey and milk on our tongues, and thus to read Torah is like honey and milk. So this is how we go from if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Transitive property. Yes, math. But let's take a look at what Mishnah says. Did you? Betty will continue. For us.
Okay. Dairy foods. See Magen Abraham, and I also heard in the name of a Gadol who said a correct reason for this, that when Bnei Yisrael stood at Har Sinai and accepted the Torah, when the Ten Commandments were revealed and Through this, all the parts of the Torah were also revealed to them, like that Rav Sadia Gaon writes that the Ten Commandments sustain the whole Torah. And they went down from the mountain to their homes. They found nothing to eat immediately except for dairy foods, because for meat they would need much preparation to slaughter with a checked knife, like Hashem commanded, and to clean out the strings of forbidden fats and blood, and to rinse and salt the meat. Also to cook in new vessels, because their previous vessels had been used to cook meat that they now discovered was actually treif, had been used in the last 24 hours, which is what is forbidden biblically. So their old vessels were forbidden to them. Therefore, they choose an account of the time to eat dairy foods, and we do this as a commemoration of this.
So essentially, they just didn't have enough time to make kosher meat. So, I mean, break out your lactate, because, you're going to be eating dairy for a while, because God just said, oh, by the way, you have to follow these kosher laws now, and everybody's going, okay, it's going to take some time, though. Is that okay with you? Sort of thing. And God was like, just eat dairy food. That's fine. So we see here a more practical reason as to why the dairy food was eaten and why we commemorate it. Now, another tradition that we're doing right now, but not for as long, is Tikkun Le'el Shavuot, the studying for the evening of Shavuot. So let us see what some texts might bring to light about this tradition. Shall we start back around?
Let them be ready for the third day, for on the third day Adonai will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai.
So, this is like giving the Israelites a heads up. God's coming. You might want to clean your room. Okay? And in fact, even Ezra comments on this.
And be ready. Its meaning might be that no person among them should sleep during the night, after the manner of the high priest on Yom Kippur, as Israel would hear God's voice in the morning.
Mm-hmm. So, very interesting. Now, if you're under the age of 40, stop listening now, because we're going to talk about the Zohar. Okay? Just kidding. No. The Zohar, this esoteric piece of our tradition that has so many beautiful things. We get this idea of Kabbalat Shabbat, of the Shekhinah and God coming together in this marriage of beauty. We get that from the Kabbalistic tradition in the Zohar. So can you tell us what the Zohar has to say?
It says in the Zohar that the original pious ones would be awake all the night, working in Torah. And already, most of those who learn to do this. It's possible to give a reason for this according to its simple understanding, that Israel slept all night, and the Holy One, blessed be He had to wake them. As the Midrash says, therefore, we need to fix this.
So essentially what this says is that the Israelites overslept. They slept in, and God had to be like the mother pounding on the door, saying, wake up, it's time for school. They were not prepared. So in order to prevent this, has anybody pulled an all-nighter because they realize it's 3 o'clock in the morning and if I fall asleep, I'm not going to wake up? Yeah. I confess that I have done that once or twice because of the morning service. But it sort of reminds us to sort of keep a healthy healthy schedule in order to prevent us from, the staying up all night does not promote a healthy schedule, but it reminds us that if we don't want to stay up all night, we should have that healthy schedule. And I think many people should pay attention to that. Go away. Okay. Any other ideas? We've been mainly on the. Let's take a hafsakah. Let's take a short break, and let's see if anybody has any questions so far. If you're out there in virtual, mystical, electronic land, feel free to type in the chat any questions, and our wonderful Eric Adams will relay that question to me. Anybody have any? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Excuse me. Why the tradition of having confirmation on Shavuot?
Ah, yes, confirmation. So those congregations who have a strong youth base usually have confirmation. Okay, so confirmation is usually is at the end of a child's study. The end of the formal study that is given at a temple or a religious school. And it is them declaring that they will continue to study on their own, and they are confirming this in front of the community. Just like we have a bar and bat mitzvah, where they stand up and say that they are ready to take on the mantle of this responsibility in front of the community. Just like at a wedding. All of these things where we stand up in front of a community and say, I am now this. And I was talking last night about these liminal spaces, these times of transition. So that is a time of transition.
But why on Shavuot? We
Because
have done that here, and I'm sure we will again. So, just want to know why.
Because it's easy. Really. One, because it's easy. Because we have consecration, which is the opposite, the hafuch, the opposite, which is when a child enters into the formal study. And this confirmation is at the end. So we start at Simchat Torah, where they receive it, and then they end their formal training on Shavuot, where they formally declare, confirming that they have received this Torah and that they shall continue their studies. Yeah, very, very good question. Any other questions? No. Any questions online? Nope. Okay, good. We'll continue to the next page, because this is what a lot of people remember certain holidays by what we read. We remember Purim because of the book of Esther. That's a big part of it. We remember Tish B'Av. Tish B'Av with Megillat Ecclesiastes, which I can't remember. Kohelet, thank you. I couldn't remember it. I'm having a good night. So we remember these things by what we read. And what we read on Shavuot is Megillat Ruth. And let's take a look at some reasons why we might, why our rabbinic sages have decided to put the book of Ruth for this holiday.
So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go follow your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me, if anything but death parts me from you."
Ooh, pretty heavy. And pretty heavy to be right at the beginning of the book. Here we see Ruth declaring her love not only for the Jewish people, but for God, and deciding that this love is so abundant that she will continue the rest of her life with these people, and that she will accept, and I think that's the key word here, she will accept these traditions, these laws, and God in the way that these people, these Jewish people worship. So it's the acceptance, because you can be given something and not accept it. I think the whole point of Shavuot, even though we say Matan Toratenu, where we were given our Torah, it really should be that we accepted our Torah. Because I can't tell you the number of things I've been given here or there that just sit somewhere on my bookshelf. And I remember when I was leaving, when I was moving out of New Jersey, I remember, who's that one person that says, if it doesn't spark joy, throw it away? What? Hold on. One more time.
Marie Kondo.
Yes, Marie Kondo. I just wanted to make sure everybody else could hear. So I found myself throwing away a lot of stuff, and I realized that it's a big waste. So now when somebody gives me something, like a new book for study or something like that, I receive it, and I say thank you, but I then have to say, am I really going to use this? Or will it benefit somebody more than myself? Now, with the Torah, we can have the best of both worlds. We can receive it, we can accept it, and we can also continue to give it out. Not literally giving the Torah to people, but in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we act towards other people. The Torah gives us tools in ways to do this properly. And so we can give the Torah by our actions. Let's take a look at one more thing from Ruth.
Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, I would like to go to the fields and glean among the ears of grain behind someone who may show me kindness. Yes, daughter, go, she replied, and off she went. She came and gleaned in a field behind the reapers, and as luck would have it, it was the piece of land belonging to Boaz, who was Elimelech's family.
Anybody have an idea of what this means?
Well, the meaning is to be, whatever wasn't taken by the owner is to be left for charity.
Yes, so I'll just repeat that. Gleaning was you would go in after the harvest, and we're commanded to leave whatever falls from our work. If something falls, like a piece of branch or something falls off onto the ground, you leave it there, and you also don't harvest the corners of your fields. It is a form of tzedakah to give to people who are less fortunate. But nowadays we kind of do it so that those who are in need don't have to do so much work. They already have a lot of stuff going on with them. They don't need the extra work of going out and harvesting. So, here we see that Ruth is literally participating in the traditions. We see her starting to to really do the work that we were talking about. Now, here's another bit of tradition that I found out the 3 years ago that I had never known growing up. And this is the next page. Decorating with greenery. Okay? We don't have greenery, but we have some fruits. We have some symbolic things of springtime, of freshness, of growth. So, what is up with this decorating greenery? Well, the Shulchan Aruch says this.
We have the custom to spread out plants on Shavuot in the synagogue and in houses as a memory for the happiness of the receiving of the Torah.
So here we have a direct answer to our question, why greenery? Well, because this is what they did. And the Shulchan Aruch writes it down and gives us an account of it. So we have an actual account. But the Mishnah comes along.
In remembrance of the joy of receiving the Torah, for there were grasses around Mount Sinai, as it says, the flocks and cattle shall not graze.
So, this is a very interesting bit. If you look back at the text, when the Torah was given to the Israelites, God said, "And do not let your flocks or cattle graze." So why? The whole idea of Rabbinic Judaism is to answer these questions that come up in our texts, and so this is one of the ideas: is that because of the happiness, we should let the earth be. We should let the beauty of the earth be a reminder to us of the happiness and the joy of receiving the Torah. So don't let your flocks or cattle mess it up, because if you've ever seen a flock of anything run through a valley or something, they just leave a whole pile of dirt behind it. And that's it. So we're reminded to appreciate the beauty of the world. Sacred space. Yes, to create sacred spaces. So just like we were talking about last night, that the Levites were in charge of taking down and putting up the Mishkan, taking the ark with them, and they were responsible with creating the actual space for God to dwell. The rest of the community's responsibility was, at this time, was to keep the area, to keep the whole camp, to keep the whole land beautiful for this time of celebrating, of receiving the Torah. So we have taken a look at all of these wonderful bits of tradition. Now I ask the question, what did I forget? Does anybody have? Because God knows I've been focusing. By the way, this book, the Book of Our Heritage by Eliyahu Kitov, it's a 3-volume set. If you've ever wanted the most concise explanations of why we do things, and you want it in the order of the months that they appear, this 3-volume set is indispensable. It's where I got the majority of knowledge about the holidays when I began to study at HUC and in seminary. It is invaluable. You should see my copy at home. It has Post-it notes and bookmarks and all sorts of things. This is my nice copy for my office here, if anybody wants to borrow it. But did I forget anything? Anybody?
Oh, there's always more.
There's always more. This is like the bare minimum of texts to bring to a study session about Shavuot. and I thank my mentor for helping me come up with these ideas, and I thank you for being here with me this evening. I thank those who are joining virtually for joining in. I hope you learned something, and please join us tomorrow morning for a beautiful service, followed by which will end with a Yisker service. Oh, yes, and we have Shabbat next week. We have a Shabbat dinner beforehand. So please contact the front office, leave a message, or even if you can't remember who to call me. I'll give you the information and I'll send you to the right person. But we have a Shabbat dinner beforehand, followed by a lovely musical service with our Shabbat choir. I'm so excited, and I hope to see you soon. Chag Sameach.
Thank you.